Alright. Sorry about that. Took us a second to figure this out. Alright, give us half a second, we'll get going. This is actually going to go live. Alright. Alright, there we go. Now I got it set up on there. Alright. Now that we finally figured this out, I'm Josh, this is Anthony, and we own Hellfire Flies, which is a company that specializes in tying poppers, so strictly topwater stuff, saltwater stuff. Yeah, Norvise asked us to come on, use the Nor-vise, which is what we use, show the airbrushing process. It's going to take a little bit of time, we'll show you that, and then show building the bodies, showing the whole process from pretty much start to finish, for the most part. Yeah. So where else do we start before we start airbrushing?
And both of us fish down in Cape Cod and the Rhode Island area. For us, most of these flies are used primarily for striped bass, bluefish, and albies, whatever else will come up around here for them. I kind of got into this because there's seems like a huge following in the Northeast for plugs and custom painted plugs and collectible plugs, and there really wasn't anybody doing anything like that with the flies. So I think we both wound up getting an airbrush at the same time, messing around with it, and through some trial and error, and a lot of testing finishes and things like that. I think we were able to put together a pretty durable product, and one that definitely catches fish, and kind of just brings a little more art to just a standard foam popper. Not that you really need it to catch fish, but it's fun, and they look cool.
Yeah,
we're having a good time with it.
Yeah, and Anthony and I, we've been fishing together for a whole bunch of years. And actually, I met him when I worked at the fly shop that he now works at. And we fished together every day and in the middle of the night all the time, and kind of always been doing that. And now we do a lot in Rhode Island and a ton on the Cape as well. So, but we can talk a little bit about what we're using, and then I guess we can just start from the airbrushing. It's a process, so we'll show you that, and we're gonna, between the two of us, we'll finagle cameras. So if you guys need to, I see everyone's commenting stuff. If you need us to zoom in or do something different, just holler. I'll try to fix it as best we can. So as far as the airbrushing, we'll get into that when we start that. And because the camera's set up right now in front of the vise, we use a regular standard Nor-vise with the big game, or the large jaws, sorry. Everything we tie, the smallest we tie is 1/0. We go all the way up to 6/0, 5/0. So we end up kind of tying bigger stuff. So the jaws themselves here, we like using the larger ones. Obviously use the bobbin. I had heard about him from this old guy that I fished with for years. He showed me it, and he thought it was the neatest thing, and I sat and messed with it. And then there's a shop up in Maine, All Points, we were just talking about this earlier. They started carrying them, and I was the first one to grab it and try it out, and it's I love it. I tied a bazillion flies on it, so it's pretty neat. Hi from Vermont, by the way, whoever just wrote that. But yeah, so
I pretty much found about it at the Bear's Den. We stock all the vices and all the jaws, and something that it's intriguing, really, because it's not really like any other vice out there, and the whole backstory on it is really cool. I don't know if anybody's ever been to the shows. You're really familiar with the vice, and
Norm there.
And, yeah, Norm and his speed tying demos and everything. It was a really cool platform, and it holds the hook rock solid, which is really all I needed to do. It rotates on axis very well once you get it set up. It's just a great hook holding platform.
Yeah, and we'll show you it as we kind of go along, because we put the thread we use is pretty heavy duty. We'll talk about that later, but it's we put quite a bit of tension on these things. They're made for bluefish, stripers, albies. We have people using them for tarpon right now. We have people using them for a lot of redfish. your typical largemouth. And I know one of you guys was using them for snakehead, so we try to use some pretty heavy duty stuff and make sure these aren't going to completely blow apart on the first fish. In theory, I don't know that you're going to win a battle against a snakehead or a bluefish with a popper no matter what, but we put the vise through its paces kind of to get to that point. So do you want to start doing airbrushing? I'll try to set up the camera.
Yeah, sure.
All right.
I mean, we both use Iwata airbrushes and Iwata compressors. I kind of started with the cheapest, I guess, bundle you could call it, the Neo and the Neo compressor. I still actually use that for quite a bit of them. It's not something you have to make a huge initial investment in, but you do definitely want to get a good quality brush. And I'd say, an Iwata is going to cost you at least $100 for the brush. And if you try to cheap out on it, you really
you get what you pay for.
Yeah, it's going to make things a lot more difficult, especially learning the whole process. It's one of those things where $100 at the beginning, the brush can last you years and years. I mean, I've painted thousands of flies on mine now with that initial $100 investment. So it's not crazy. You're not spending thousands on a brush, but I'd really want to say, get something good like an Iwata or a Pache, something like that. That's definitely like an artist quality airbrush to start with.
And you can totally get away with like a Copic system or one of those. Their big issue anyway is getting stuff overseas now, but that's probably everyone's issue. But there's a limit to it. This allows for a lot of versatility, and you'll see. It's kind of endless with what you can do. So anyway, but instead of talking about that, we'll go show you some stuff. So bear with us, guys. I'm going to mess around with the camera as we kind of move over because the whole setup here, I can kind of show you it actually. Bear with me for one sec. Oh, I guess I can't turn the camera around, but we have a whole setup going here from the actual flies, the manufacturing of them, to my TV watching. We right now have a bunch of orders going that are turning on the spindles here, and then we have a booth over here, a setup for airbrushing. So I'm just going to move everything. You guys will see in a second here. I guess I can't turn that around, so I'm able to do.
Just tilt it off to the side. I should be able to hold it.
Yeah. Alright, we're going to kind of mess with this. We'll see if we need to change it.
Okay, so I'm going to do my, call it the Silver Baitfish. It's one of our best sellers, I'd say. Do you have like a version without a tail on it over there? Yeah, there you go. This is one halfway done. It's a silverback, a lot of sparkle, a lot of flash on there, white belly, and it is a scaled pattern. There we go. It looks like, there's a lot going on there, but it's not too terribly difficult to do something like this. Right off the bat, as like a first one of your first patterns. You only need 3 colors of paint, So this is I just get these foam heads in bulk. This is a 3/0 stainless steel saltwater kink shanked hook. I use the kink shanked hooks because I slit all this foam on the bottom. I don't know if you can kind of see it there. With that slit, I fill it up with epoxy and kind of cement the hook in there. That kink just prevents it from ever rotating on the hook shank. These are still foam. When you do hook a fish, one of the things we don't want you to do is to grab the foam of the popper to unhook it. Use pliers or a hook removing device and grab the hook shank. Just because even though that kink is in there, it doesn't mean that you can't twist the foam enough to actually break a chunk of the foam off on the inside.
The brand of hook they're asking.
These are Umpqua stainless steel hooks. I found them to be the best. Something going to take some time on like this to make or buy. You don't really want the hook to rust out on you. These hold up to multiple bluefish and striped bass.
Kind of foam, or what the foam's called.
Foam you can get from Rainey's, you can get from Wapsie, you can get from Hairline. You can cut your own. Umpqua makes a cutter now that you can attach to a drill and punch your own plugs through and sand them down. It's kind of one of those things where there's really no limitations on any of this. It's more your imagination, but this is just a standard traditional popper size that we've come up with. And the one thing you want to do when you're gluing these hooks into the foam is when I slit these, you'll notice that the hook eye is not in the middle. It's down on the bottom of the popper. And a lot of guys, and a lot of the foam that's out there, has the hole for the hook to go through in the middle of the foam. And if you were to do that, you'd lose about half your hook gap here. And you'd lose a lot of fish on the strike because of that. So basically, if I have foam that has a hole in it, I'll slit straight up from the bottom right up to that hole, or if it's already pre-slit, I will just glue the hook in to like the bottom edge of that foam. If you can kind of see it, it's right along that bottom edge. That gives you a nice big hook gap. It also gives you a lot of weight towards the bottom of the popper, which is going to make it swim the right way and not twist in the water. You pretty much always have this hook acting as a keel when you glue it towards the bottom like that. And like I said, it just gives you a lot of hook gap. I mean, if you can imagine, you don't have a ton here, but I have at least a finger. You can slide through there. If you were to move this up, up farther into the foam, you'll cut that down to this, and that's just not, striped bass have huge mouth. So do bluefish and redfish and pretty much everything else you're going to be using these for. So you definitely want that gap there. Even though this popper is silver with a white belly, I start off with a black paint. Depending on your airbrush, this is kind of where the money is well spent. If you get a good airbrush that you can push a lot of PSI through with the decent compressor, you can use thicker paint. The one that I use it's not quite as nice as the one Josh has, so I have to thin my paint out a little bit, which isn't a huge deal for me. But the nicer and more money you spend on this, the more paint brands you're gonna be able to use.
And this, I'm gonna just kind of try to move the camera over. Does that work? Yeah. So that's the airbrush, the compressor that we're using. One of the downsides to any airbrush is condensation. Even here in Cape Cod, it's actually raining now, so it's still kind of humid out, so to speak. But there's a lot of moisture traps in a lot of these higher end compressors and airbrush systems. It kind of makes it nice. You don't want to get water in your paint if you can help it. So that's kind of a nice key to like the higher end ones. But you'll find it even in kind of the middle grade ones and stuff too, where you can build on them.
Okay, so I just put some black paint in the brush. Before I turn this on, some guys will hold these in their hand. I have an old cheap vise that I use that's full of paint, just so I can keep my hand away from it, and I can kind of get it at all angles. So, like I was saying, even though this is a silver fish, I do start with black because that's going to be the part of the scale that's going to shine through the silver at the end. And basically, you want to coat the whole back of the fish black and both the sides and leave the belly white. And the easiest way to do that is to basically hold this up straight, kind of just coat the back, and then ever so slightly hit the sides. And by never having the belly facing you, you're never going to have that get hit with the black paint. It's always going to stay white. So yeah, I'll just go ahead and do that now. And this paint you can find pretty much any hobby store. There's a whole bunch of different ones out there that will work. Basically, what I would say is just find whatever brand of paint. These are all water-based acrylic. That's pretty much what everyone uses throughout this, foam painting, and through, from what I gather, with the wooden plugs as well. It's basically water-based acrylic with an epoxy overcoat. So there's a ton of water-based acrylics out there. Find the one that works best in your brush. Stick with one brand, I'd say. That way they blend well. That's kind of the big advantage of using a a system like this versus the Copic. The Copic, you really have no option to blend colors. You're kind of locked into whatever Copic has, and that's what you have in the brush at that time. With this, if I have trying to make a mackerel and the green isn't quite have enough blue in it, I'll just add a little bit of blue to the green, and you can play with colors that way, which is one of the big reasons why I got into this to begin with. Just the way you can shade from a light to dark. You can go from a yellow to a fire orange and have everything, every color in between, just leaving yellow in there to start off with and just adding small amounts of red. You can get every color of a flame going from yellow to a fire orange. It's just a really cool option to have. So yeah, I'm going to kick this on.
Let me see if I can reverse this and put it over here. Is it in your way, or is that
it should be okay.
Okay.
Like I said, I'm just aiming at the back here, letting it kick down the sides. You can kind of check both sides, do a little more here, so I'll just hit this from the top a little bit. And I know it's hard for you to see, but I have the whole back coated black now, and it goes about halfway up the side. Which is exactly what I wanted.
Just see if we can zoom in.
Might just kick a little more black on this side to darken it up a little bit. Alright, so that's step one done. One thing that all of these paints are going to have in common is they need to be heat set. And it's a big step to do. I know just from airbrushing t-shirts and things of that nature, these water-based acrylics can actually become permanent on clothes as soon as they heat set. So you want to do the same thing with this foam. If you don't heat set it, it can run when you go to add your top coat. It can run if you're mixing another color into it. Once it's heat set, you could probably actually fish this thing how it is, and not have it come off. I mean, it will chip off obviously because there's no protective coating on there, but it's pretty permanent on the foam once it's heat set. So I'm just going to do that with the hair dryer. You want one that's going to get pretty hot. Some people you see online will use a heat gun. They're pretty much using that on balsa wood and wooden plugs and things of that nature. It doesn't have the best effect with foam. So. This will also speed up the drying process quite a bit. Yeah, so that's all you need to do, really. And this is going to be dry to the touch. It's not going to come off. It's not coming off, on my finger, and it's jet black right there. So to get this scale pattern on here, I'm just going to put this up in there, and you can get a piece of like the netting you would use off of a clam bag, like a bag of clams or an onion bag, or just anything with a nice scale pattern. Just give me those 3 clips that I took in. It should be under the.
Are you looking at those clips there?
No, just.
Clips.
Probably just use your clips.
I didn't see them here.
Alright.
There's a whole pile of them right there.
Alright. So, what I do is I stretch this. I like the stretchy material because you can kind of manipulate the scales to whatever you'd like.
Let's see if I can adjust that.
Alright.
That's not going to do it.
I like to fold it down halfway, and you kind of tuck this front half in and go right around the front of the popper. Give that a little clip on the bottom, and that's kind of just to hold this in place right there. I use 3 clips for these. I think that's all you need. This back clip is probably the most important one. That's what's going to allow you to stretch this. You can see we kind of got a nice tight weave going here now. So you get a good grip on the hook itself, pinching this and there. And what I do once I have those two on there, I'll just get some scissors and I'll cut this a little bit shorter so I can get another clip in there pretty easily. I mean, you don't have to do this. I just found that this makes it a lot. You know, it's one of those trial and error things that makes it a lot easier. I'll get the 3rd clip. I'll open it up, and I'll just have it pinch the belly kind of close. So now I have this clip. You know, it's tight on the front. You have it pinched down tight on the back. We're not going to get too much silver on the belly anyway. You kind of just want a weight there to kind of hold it down. So I'm just going to prep some silver real quick. Actually, let me make sure all the black is out of here. This is another thing. You don't have to, you know, clean your airbrush out after every color change you do. If they're going to be similar colors, you can, you know, you can kind of just go with the flow, so to say. Always give your paint a good shake, especially if you're using paint with sparkle in it, like the silver. Just going to distribute the sparkle a little bit easier. Alright, so now with the silver, I'm going to do this from far away, and I'm kind of just going to spray stream and then, you know, touch it towards the basically you want to get this whole thing looking pretty silver. I'm just going to add a little bit more paint to the gun.
Yeah, you didn't get the eye that too bad.
Alright, now we'll heat set this with the dryer. And you don't want to move these clips until you at least get it heat set a little bit. So now that I have it heat set a little bit, I'm going to take these clips off and then give it the final heat set. And you can see just by doing that, taking that netting off, gives it a nice scale pattern under there. You have the black shining through, the silver underneath. I know it's a little tough with this light, and then you get the white kind of silver belly there. And this is one of those patterns where anything with sparkle, as soon as you are to top coat it with your epoxy, that sparkle really just comes to life, and it just gives it a whole new dimension. It looks cool now, but once you get that clear coat on there, it just really comes to life. So, just that little bit. This is going to be perfectly dry to touch now, and it's ready for the clear coat. So there's a bunch of different things you can use for clear coat. There's KBS Diamond Coat, which is kind of a one-step epoxy thing. There's a whole bunch of water-based epoxies you can get at Home Depot or Lowe's. UV epoxy. Probably the easiest starting off with the least amount of coats you're going to have to do.
would be to just get a 30-minute epoxy and a turner. With the 2-part epoxy, especially if you make it a little bit on the thick side, you can usually get away with 1 or 2 coats. The finish that we've settled on, it's not a 2-part epoxy, but it is a blend of a couple different things, and it goes on thin. And we found that after 4 or 5 coats, it really just looks like glass. That's another one of those things that you really mess around with and see which finish is going to work best for you in your environment. One thing I will give you for a tip is make sure you use a dehumidifier in whatever room you're running your final coating in. You want that room to be as dry as possible. Any kind of moisture in the air is just going to make these things take 10 times longer to dry, and they'll dry tacky. They'll crack on you sometimes, trap bubbles. Totally dry environment is a huge plus. So yeah, that's the Silver Baitfish right there. I'll put 2 coats on, and then I'll put these eyes on after that, and then once those eyes go on, it's another 3 coats till I can't feel the eye anymore. It kind of just gets buried in the inside the top coat. And once these are out, in the sun, they just sparkle like you wouldn't believe. And now you can do whatever you want for a tail. Later on, I'll show you how I do my traditional bucktail tails. But I'll let Josh paint his up.
Keep an eye on this.
Sure.
Here. All right. Oh, what's your name? All right. So I'm gonna try something different here. As I was playing around, watching here, I think I can turn this around. I didn't even see this option before, so bear with me. We're going to turn this down. All right. See if we can get a little bit better view. So Anthony does a different style than what I do. We consider his the traditional style. It's kind of like an homage to like the old school plugs and lures and things like that. I'm using more of a modern design that's been out for quite a while now. I'll show you in a second here. It's made by a company called Flymen. I know a lot of people have heard of them. They're out of like South Carolina, something like that, maybe Charleston, and they make all kinds of different heads. They're they're still a foam. They're still a closed cell foam, but they're finished differently. They're more of a slicker finish. So what I do is it ends up being a little bit different than what Anthony does to finish his. At the end of the day, they still kind of look the same finish, but there's a couple extra steps that I found out I needed to do. This is one of the heads we use. This is called the Howitzer Head. They're made overseas somewhere, and they come in a bunch of different sizes. Actually, I take that back. Right now, they only have 2 sizes in this one. There's these also, the double barrels. They make those in 4 or 5 sizes. I think they have some new ones coming out, the last I heard. But for today, we're going to do the Howitzer ones, and we're going to do one that I don't know where I came up with a dumb name, but the Smurf Murder. I only am tying it because I think the name is funny. I have a bunch of them here, and I don't know where I just put them. All right, here we go. This is what the end result's going to look like. So it's got a pearl belly on it. It's got some kind of a turquoise top. I don't know the official color name, which is kind of weird since I use it all the time. Yeah, I guess turquoise. And then we do like a red splatter on it. I'll show you that. It's more of a mess than anything, but it's kind of neat to look for. So yeah, so I'll do this. Anthony kind of touched up about the paints. I use the same paints he uses. Like I said, the finish is relatively the same. Surface prep. Generally not. The question was about if they need any surface prep before we start painting. No, for the most part, not. These come out relatively blemish-free. We don't have to roughen it up to have the paint adhere. The basic or the biggest important part's kind of what Anthony mentioned about heat treating it with a hairdryer. That's kind of the key. If you don't do that, pretty much anything you add to it will make it bleed. So the heat treatment's the big one. We haven't really run into any heads that you need to do much for. They're pretty much ready to go for the most part.
I pretty much heat all the heads a little bit too before I even start painting on them.
Yeah.
I don't know if you do the same.
Yeah. So I guess as Anthony was saying, that you can kind of preheat the head a tad. these closed cell foams, I mean, they're pretty densely packed foam. They sometimes use like a marine foam. I don't know if I'm giving away a secret there, but those type of foams, if you heat them, sometimes they open up a tad, absorb paint a little better, things like that. So to each their own on that one. So in the meantime, let me, I gotta clean out this brush real quick. I know we talked about cleaning them out, but it's kind of important. And also don't leave paint in there for long, because once it dries out, it's just a whole pain in the butt. So bear with me 1 second while I do this. My big fear is not drying out the cup after I clean it, because then you're mixing cleaner with paint and it just becomes a mess. So, alright, so we're going to do the little bit of pearl. So give me 1 second while I get that going. So I start off with a lighter color first on mine. I don't know why, I just do. But usually going lighter to darker, I don't know if you already talked about that, but going lighter to darker is a little easier, so you can kind of mix paints in. If you go the opposite way, you're continuously cleaning them. Just preference. Alright. Everyone see that alright? I think that might work. Alright. So we're just going to give it a little bit of a quick coat on the bottom. And I'll give it a quick, just a little bit of a spray around the mouth. This pearl is almost impossible to see on the camera, but it's there. So just believe me on that one. So in 1 sec here, I'm going to swap out colors. We're going to go with that turquoise color I was saying. Oh, good. I'm glad you guys could see that. Alright. Alright. So, here's a turquoise what it's going to look like. And we're just going to do just real light on it. If you go crazy, pull down like crazy fast, it'll start either bubbling up or it'll just kind of look like a rain splatter. It's just not great. So some of these dark colors will take a little bit of time to get going on. This one mixed with the pearl a little bit that I had in there. Just gives it kind of a cool effect. Not insanely intentional, but it does look nice nonetheless. Alright, so if I wanted to touch that up, I could. This is a pretty simple, straightforward pattern. There's not a lot of stenciling, things like that, but so I think you can see the pearl just fades over to the turquoise here. And blow the rest of that out. And then we're gonna see if we can do this. So that's what we got right now. We're gonna do the blood spatter on it. So bear with me 1 sec. We're gonna get the paint booth for that, which is really just a box. Let's see if this works. Oh, I think this is gonna be okay. All right. So I found out after about 100 poppers that I splattered paint on the walls. We're gonna do a booth from now on. And we're also going to use a glove because the stuff's a pain to wash off. So, if you can see this, alright, just going to alligator clip this in. Okay, get the gist there. And then, there's not a lot of secret tools to this. The really only thing you need to use is a brush of some sort. Doesn't even have to be anything decent. This is, I think it's wherever that is there. These are like cheapo Amazon deals. You can buy like 250 of them for like $5 or something. Do you paint the mouth and end of the foam? Yeah, so the mouth on this one just happens to be pearl. We do some that are red. We leave some that are just plain white or black or purple. It doesn't matter, but we do that. In the back end, not so much because we usually hide the body, or hide the head and the body together there. Some of them will do. Some like the frog pattern, since they're reversed, we will. But for the most part, it's a...
You do have
kind of leave them.
You do have to top coat the front and the back.
Yeah, you still have to coat it, though.
Otherwise, that will absorb water and it will crack from the inside out.
Yeah. Yeah, and if you start a crack on the back, it kind of never ends well. So I'm just mixing up some paint while I'm yakking away here. So this takes a couple of drops of paint. We end up having to do it a few times to really get the effect. But if I do it right, we're going to splatter paint. I'll have to get some more paint here. That one almost worked. Sometimes it can look really gnarly, and other times it's just really small. But there's a couple more. And I can almost assure you this is pretty much how everybody else does it. I don't know if it's like a trade secret, and if it is, I'm sorry, but...
There's a few different ways you can do it. Some guys will flick that paintbrush up against something, like a wooden dowel. They'll kind of whack it hard, and you can get a splatter effect like that.
That's true. Yeah.
Other guys will use a toothbrush. You can actually do it in the airbrush itself, although you tend to waste a lot of paint that way. But yeah, this is probably the most common way, as Josh said. There's 1,000 other videos on YouTube showing it, so I don't think we really gave anything away here. Yeah, so it's just a couple drops, and just you flick it on. I mean, some of the patterns can look really cool. Some of them are kind of messed up, but this one came out okay. So I don't know. I think it's kind of fun. As Anthony said, you heat treat everything with the splatter on this. You got to treat it longer because it's thicker. It makes sense, like any paint, I suppose. I'm not going to actually go and actually cure this one. I have some that are done up. But so I would heat treat this one. I'd let it sit for a little while, make sure it's really completely dried out, any moisture that's kicking around in there. I'm not going to seal it in because that's kind of the end-all be-all to these. And then at that point we end up, I have a coating I put on prior to the finish to help it out. I put the eyes on prior to that. And then we just do the finishes. And like we're kind of showing you before, we have some orders for some shops going right now. There's some more on that other side as well. So so we have them in various stages of finish there. But yeah, so the end result though, once you get, need some more lighting here. Oh, there's a close up of the light. Once you get the finish on and stuff, you can kind of see. I mean, it's quite a bit different. It really just kind of pops and stands out, which is what we're going for. I mean, half of our business is tying flies, and you're also trying to sell them, and they do have eye appeal. That's our goal as well. They fish well. We know they do. We fish them ourselves. We fish almost every day. Anthony's obsessed, even more so than me, and go every day on the Cape or down in his case, Rhode Island. And it's what we throw. So we kind of combined everything, something that looks really cool and actually works real well. And we've been happy with the heads we use. The ones that Anthony's using, those traditional style ones that we call them, they're pretty knockout patterns. And same with the howitzers. The pop's unbelievable. There is another one that I've been using a little bit. I'll show you. It's still messing with them quite a bit, but I've been finding them that they're pretty productive, and they're just funky looking, moving. I'm just going to show you what the let's see. I'll just show you what a plain one looks like. But these are I think the Frankenfly, the brain dead poppers he calls them. And you can put them different positions on the hook. You can put them like this. You can put them like that. You can reverse them to make them dive. They're really cool. I've made a bunch of articulated ones, and they're funky. I'll grab one real quick. So, see if I can zoom out maybe a tad. Maybe not. So, there's one of the articulated ones of that. And this is just something we were messing around with recently. And I've been chucking them. This is on a 4-aught Gamakatsu SL12. And that's been pretty neat fishing for stripers with and stuff. And then here's another one that's just kind of messing around with a howitzer head and a Kona hook, which I'll tell you about those after. But yeah, they're pretty neat to mess around with. So, but yeah, I think we're gonna go start building some bodies. So just bear with me while I turn around cameras and all this stuff here. Put the head on you now.
Yeah, you gotta swap that. Is that
all right? So yeah, if you can see this, then I think we're good. So yeah, I mean, these traditional poppers, like Josh was saying, I'm just going to move this a little bit closer. Let's pull So yeah, you can see that's the scale pattern right there with the white belly. The traditional poppers, I try to keep it simple. Use Bucktail, Crystal Flash. I found to kind of work with Bucktail the best. Almost like a Clouser kind of combination, but they marry together really well. A little bit on material selection. This Bucktail is pretty much the ideal Bucktail I'm looking for in these. I do have a lot of big Bucktails that I'll tie flat wings and things like that with. And a lot of guys will use them for this style of fly. The one thing I have found is that if you stick with the shorter fibers, but still keep them soft, if the whole tail is short, they tend to be more the same length. So you're not stripping so many, shorter hairs out. Like some of those really long tails, you'll have a nice clump you'll take out, and half the hair will be short, the other half will be long. And instead of having to stack it, and getting all the fibers to line up together, I'd almost rather, for these flies, find a nice, super soft tail. And you can see this tail is super soft, and it's on the shorter side. So it's pretty much ideal for tying these kind of poppers. So basically, I'm going to start off with some Veevus. This is their power thread on the 140. I've just found that to be incredibly strong, and started tying with it. I don't think I'm going to go back to anything else. I always lay down a thread base on the hook. I think where a lot of people will, they'll say they have their feathers spinning on the hook, or they have their bucktail spinning on the hook, and all kinds of things like that. I think it's because they're just tying it to a bare hook. You throw it on this thread base, especially if it's a flat, wax style of thread. It gives something for the materials to bite into, and it really stops them from spinning on the hook. So I'll put down a base of thread, and I'll just get a clump. I'd say it's about a third of a pencil's width. Just bucktail. Try to match it up so it's just about the same length as the popper itself. I will strip out the little tiny hairs and the super long ones. So, like I said, with this shorter tail overall and the softness, most of them wind up being the same length. So, kind of just match it up like that, and then I'll cut it right here. And what I'll do is I'll butt this up against, so it's almost splaying over the top a little bit, because what's going to happen is when you wrap this, the thread's going to suck it down away from the body. And sometimes if you don't start off like this, you wind up with a gap between the body and the tail itself. So you can see there I have a little bit peeking out, and that's fine. I'd rather have it peeking out like that than have a gap that you have to worry about filling up with later. So once I get all this wrapped in, I go just about to the hook bend. I'll throw a wrap underneath just to stop this from spinning, and to kick it up a little bit, and then a couple more over. Now I'll add the Crystal Flash. I take just regular old Crystal Flash. One half of it, I'll cut 3 strands off. What I'll do is I'll measure these up so that they're the length of the tail. I'll kind of pinch it down on this side, do a capturing wrap with 2 or 3 wraps right there, and then I'll fold all of it over to bring it over to the other side. So now I have 3 wraps on each side of the tail. Kind of just lock it down right there. Now clip this off pretty much even with the other ones. You can taper it a little bit, and then I'll just get one more clump of tail fur, about the same size as the last, about a third of that pencil width. I will strip out all the little guys. Like I said, just from tail selection, kind of wound up with a nice even bunch. Aim that up like that. Cut it off right there, and then again, this is going to be about halfway down your thread. I'm gonna overlap it and really get it tied in close to the back right there. And you don't want to go too far on this because you don't want a huge. I know it's hard to see. You're kind of seeing the bottom of this, but you want it to kind of be. Just see if I can angle it towards you, like that on the top, sticking out. And I'll do some wraps in the back to trap all that extra fur we had down. I'm just kind of building up a little dam here. And then I'll take my whip finisher. And I like using the tool for this because I can place where I want the final whip. And what you don't want to do is whip finish and have your final pull down to be right up against the butt, because if that happens, what's going to happen is you're going to start again separating between the popper body and your tail. You kind of want it to place the last wrap right in the middle of the thread. So with this size whip finish, you can go around the whole thing and then kind of lay it down towards the back. Just make sure you're locked down good and solid in there. And we've tried a bunch of things to coat these final wraps. I find that the bone dry from Solarez. Let me just straighten this up a little bit. The bone dry from Solarez is the best. That kind of blends into the finish. You can use epoxy if it gets a little bulky. You can use pretty much any head cement, but I don't really like to mix the like the hard as nails and stuff with the finish. I think it can react sometimes. This bone dry, which I think needs to be microwaved, but I'll spare you that now.
Don't worry,
Just put ever such a little bit on there, and on the bottom too, just to lock all those thread wraps in, and you can kind of just make all this uniform, so it just looks like a continuation of the fly.
Don't mind me, I forgot to put batteries in too.
Yeah, you can. I think you can kind of see what we achieved there. Anyway, just get this. It's kind of looks like you have the top of the fly. You know, continues down right into the tail. Looks like one piece of just hard popper. And that's kind of how I just finish off all the traditional poppers. You get this nice buoyancy of the bucktail. You get some crystal flash. It holds up well. It's easy to throw. I mean, we throw these on anything from I'd say from a 6 to 12 weight. You know, they are a little air resistant, but it's nothing crazy. And yeah, anytime there's silver colored baitfish with white bellies, they're pretty much coming up smacking these.
Do you want to talk about lines also?
Yeah, I mean, with the ones like this, with the tail like this, it's pretty easy to throw on a number of different lines. I'd say you need a little bit of an aggressive head. You could even throw this one on the Airflow Cold Salt, which is probably the least aggressive out of all the fly lines. You know, that's got a 40-foot head, and it still turns this over, I'd say, from anything from an 8 weight up. If you use something like an outbound short or a scientific angler Titan taper, where all the weight's up front, obviously it's going to turn this over even easier. And it might allow you to use something like a 6 weight, maybe even down with an outbound. You could probably throw this on a 5 actually at largemouth bass if you really wanted to, but comfortably. 8 weight and above, not really fly line dependent. You know, on these guys and the ones Josh ties with a synthetic tail. Anytime you start adding like a rabbit strip or an articulation or a bunch of feathers, you know, you're gonna need a little more power. And I think the head heavy size lines are gonna do a little bit better of a job. You know, with those. But just traditional lines are fine with these, and say like the medium howitzers and
the smaller stuff.
Yeah, should be fine. So usually, I mean, if I'm fishing topwater, I know I'm not going to get snagged and I'm in a striped blast or a bluefin blitz, I'm using probably straight 30-pound fluorocarbon, to be honest with you.
You got that good.
You know, probably 5 to 7 feet of it, sometimes even 40. If it's all bluefish around, I'll use a 3-foot length of 50-pound fluorocarbon to a 3-foot length of 30-pound fluorocarbon to a foot length of 30-pound wire. If it's just bluefish,
It's the only way to do it.
yeah, that's the good thing about the top part. You're not really worried about getting snagged. Where if you're fishing on rocks and things like that, you have to worry about potentially breaking the fly off without breaking your fly line. With these, I'm more worried about losing the fish than the fly line, to be honest with you, especially up in the top part of the water column.
Yeah. The only other thing, and we get asked a lot of questions when it comes to the company. We get messages pretty much every day at this point, and one of the ones we get people asking about using them in rivers, and they can be used in rivers. The smaller ones, you need to just shorten up your leader, or your tippet rather, and we're talking like make it 3 or 4 feet long. If you're using a popper, they're not going to get leader shy. Believe me, there's enough commotion in the water with the popper alone that they're not even looking at the leader. But if you're doing it in something with a lot of current, which we do a lot as well, a lot of river systems here that hold stripers, especially on the Cape and up where you fishes too, the shorter leader does tend to work if you get some crazy current. And then the wire spooks the striper, so you can talk more about that.
Not really. I haven't found that, to be honest with you. I mean, if the stripers are spooky, they're pretty much spooky, whether you have wire on or not. From what I found, if they're in the blitz mode, I really don't think it matters. What you have for a leader on there. If you can get close enough to the fish to fly cast to them, that's usually the challenge. Spookiness I find is the boat spooking the fish, rather than any kind of leader system you have. Sometimes it's just really hard to get close to them. That being said, there are guys who throw these behind casting eggs with spin rods quite a bit, especially the smaller. There's a smaller version of this we do called the Albi Pop, which a lot of people have been throwing behind casting eggs this year and getting quite a bit of albies on them that way, just because the heavier stuff just isn't working, and they want to experiment with flies, so they gave these a shot, and they seem to be working.
No, it's been awesome. All right, well I can go do my end of it. All right, so I'm taking that seat. It's way more comfortable. Thank you. There's a water for you too. All right, so Britt, I saw your question earlier about the head. I'll show that, and we'll be in. I'll kind of explain it when the time comes. So mine's a little different than Anthony's. Mine, I end up having to build the body first and then put the head on. It's just more work for the same thing. The hooks, I should hold this up. So I'm using, these are hooks made by Kona. Kona, I think, has something to do with Flymen. So a lot of their hooks fit their heads nicely. I think it's the same owner, or partners. This is the big game Carnivore hook. They come in a whole bunch of sizes. This is a 1/0. I also have 3/0 and 5/0 ones for some of the bigger heads. And for some of the other ones, the double barrel heads, I use, they have a Kink one as well. And I'll show you that another time. But it's kind of similar to the Umpqua one that Anthony uses, except these ones are a little bit shorter shanked. I don't need a real long one, unlike his. So the first thing I end up doing, and I've done this enough times that I kind of know where to put the thread. There's no good way to explain it, except I just want it like here. It's not near the hook point. It's not near the eye. It's not a 1/2 inch. It's just like, this is pretty much where I want it. So I'm just going to tie it in here and cut it off. Yes. All right, so good. I thought they had something to do with them. And I'm just going to bring my thread right back down to the, just prior to the bend. I won't go crazy. What I'm going to do next is, and this is something I've been I started swapping out my bodies a little bit. I was doing full synthetic, which was good. I didn't like the action of them as much. I started swapping over to some Zonker strips, still incorporating some synthetic, you'll see. And the Zonker strip itself, seem to work pretty well. The big thing, this is something Rich Strolis, who Anthony and I know, kind of told us, was to prop up the Zonker with mono. So that's what we do. So here's some mono. It's like 30 pound. You can kind of use whatever. And I'm just going to put a little bit in, and I'll show you. It's going to be tough from this angle, but what I'm really doing is just tying it in right on the very top, just the tag end of it. And I want it as straight as I can on the top. This isn't going to be anything where we're worried about the fish yanking the tail off or anything, so it doesn't have to be secured any more than a bunch of wraps. We're going to wrap it up a bunch of times. We're going to finish it off anyway. So anyway, we got this sticking out here. This is way more than you need. You only need about an inch, but it's easier this way. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to use Zonker strips. These are, well, it's all backwards to you probably, but it's the Tiger Barred Magnum strips. These are blue with black over white. I don't know if this is something new. I worked at a fly shop for a while, and I tied for a long time, and when you get Zonker strips, they're not always, like this one's actually pretty decent, relatively straight, but there's some that are like all cockeyed and crooked and bunched up. Maybe this is like not anything new, but I was excited that I figured it out. If you just cut off a piece and you stretch it, it straightens out. I'm sure I'm not the first one to do it, but needless to say, it saved me in the long run, a lot of money, because I'm not throwing out garbage pieces now, because I can straighten them right out. So that's a tip. But you're going to cut about an 1.5 to 2 inch section. Doesn't have to be crazy long. You start getting long, you are going to foul it up either way. And these waterlog pretty heavily, so we're just doing something of this length. And I don't know, whoever told me to ever cut off the end in a corner, or sorry, at an angle. Whoever told me that, I've stuck with it. So what we do is just kind of pull the hair back on it as best we can, and we're just going right to the hide itself. It's gonna be kind of hard to show, but I'm just cutting the very tip at an angle. A lot of people have said it just swims straighter. I've tried both, and I can't tell the difference, but I figure if it makes a little bit of a difference, I mean, listen, we're selling them, they should be like that, but I don't know if you can even see that. It's kind of an angle there. So, the next part I'm going to do is I'm just going to take my bodkin. I'm not even going to put this on camera because it's hard to do everything. All I'm doing is poking a hole, and I'll show you in a second where it is. I'm just poking a hole through the hide, just a little bit up, and I'll show you what I'll do with that here. So, pull that bodkin through. Next thing I'm going to do is just take the mono and put it through the hole. It's just going to hang there for a second. Now, if we were doing these and actually like for an order, we'd be done already, but we're going to kind of go slow with this. So all I'm going to do is secure this right in, do a couple pinch wraps. Just make sure you have it all in there. The big thing is make sure it sits on the hook straight. You don't want it off to like one side. The second you do, it's just not going to help you. And then take that mono, flip it over, and then I'm going to tie it right back in. It's going to be a little hard, so my fingers are probably blocking it a little bit, but just going to tie it in, and it's just going to keep it from going left and right and wrapping around for the most part. It's I would say it, I don't know, it probably lessens your amount of tangling up by, I don't know, 75-80%. I very rarely get tangled up with it this way. Sometimes you'll hook up to seaweed or something, which isn't unusual. You're going to cover up the wraps. Just keep that little loop at the end there. If I'm missing any questions, just let me know. I haven't actually been paying attention. Alright, so you got the tail section on there. Next, because like Anthony was talking, you like sparkle and flash, and if they're on the surface, I mean, there's a lot of commotion, a lot of stuff going on. The flash is always kind of nice. So I'm using the headroom, the lateral scale flash. It's this is the super small stuff. It's like 1/69th, I guess, and it's an opal. Do they make other colors?
I don't think they do in that really skinny stuff.
So real small stuff, but this stuff is kind of neat. I don't know. I use it all the time. I just take a handful of pieces off. I used to count them, and now it's a waste of time. So I take a clump, and wrap them over, and then tie them right in. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. We're going to cut these off, too, so the ends don't have to be anything special. I don't want to go beyond the tail. Again, I don't want things fouling up. The popper moves around a ton. The last thing I needed to do is just also foul up. So you just kind of cut them like that. So about the length of the tail. Maybe just a skosh shorter. And then, because who doesn't like more flash, we're doing some more Flashaboo here. This is just a silver and turquoise mix. I don't know if it has a special color name, but same deal. Just take a little clump. You don't have to count them. It's not science here. And do the same exact thing. Just V wrap it around the thread, and then up and over. Well, I started my thread a little too far back there, but secure it right in. And cut it. Oh, geez. There we go. All right, and cut it to size. So the next material we were using, it's really popular in the Northeast. I don't know if it's really popular anywhere else. It's called Bill's Body Braid. It's kind of like, for other folks, it's kind of like acrylics material, sort of. But it's a braid, but not a round braid. It's a very flat braid. The guy who had this, there's a famous pattern. It's embarrassing. It's called the MP Shiner. It's just this stuff in gold. It's a really popular pattern in New England, and they have a bunch of bazillion colors. For this one, we're using silver. You don't need a ton, but I'm going to cut off quite a length, so I'm not really forcing myself to put a small amount on here. So anyway, something like this is fine. We're only going to use a little bit of it. And just pinch wrap it on there. You know, a couple securing wraps. Oh, sorry. And then the big key here is you want, and this isn't going to look beautiful. We're going to cover it up. It's going to look nice, but you want kind of a taper. If you have it all balled up, or if where your material drops off and stuff, it shows up when you wrap it. So you want it to have a nice taper to it. We'll try to do this slowly, and usually I would just whip it around, but make sure your Flashaboo's not getting all tangled up in the process. And yeah, I am just leaving my thread hanging here. I'm going to do a securing wrap. Yes, normally you could have it off to the side there, but we're going to just keep doing this. All right, perfect. All right, so I'm going to do a couple wraps behind it, and then a couple in front of it here. Just get it all secured in. And then, not really happy with the way that Flashaboo laid out, but before we do, we've got like 2 more steps, and then we'll put the head on. But before anything, I'm going to, I try to coat this. Like Anthony said, we're going after stripers, which, mind you, have sandpaper kind of like teeth. We're going after bluefish, though. We have guys using them. I know we have a guy using them for some pike. We've got other things that are, have teeth on them, and so trying to keep the bodies as durable as possible so you can actually, use them again. So I coated this with Solarez, the Bone Dry as well. Just kind of all I use there. So bear with me while this cures for a second. But a lot of this is, we're going to hide some of this as well. We're going to finish up a body, and then we're going to put the head on. So as long as everything's kind of secured in there, it'll come out just nice. All right, so that's good there. So the last kind of part before you do the head is, I do on these, I put this kind of dubbing on it. It's called, let me get you a better color to look at. It's Magnum dubbing. If you can see that, it's by a guy named Lateral. He's a guy from Pennsylvania, I think, and he makes tons of cool colors. And most of the time, he's posting horrible meals on Facebook that he eats, and I don't know how he's still alive. But he makes all kinds of cool dubbing colors. I probably have, I don't know, 30 different colors, and I have gallon bags of it and small bags. But I mean, he just makes all kinds of different fun stuff. So anyway, since the top of this is going to be blue, we're going to use This one's called Skeletor. He has all kinds of weird names too, like Burnt Smurf. I think he has one called Barf. A couple other weird colored names. But we're just going to grab a small batch. It is similar to the laser dub. It's longer. I find this a little bit easier to work with. And he's got, like I said, he's got like a trillion colors. But just something like this. It's not going to be, we're not talking crazy amounts. I'm going to lay it right on top, right where we had stopped our thread. I'm going to pinch wrap it in. And we're only going to do a couple wraps here. If you go crazy with the wraps, you start getting this big bulk in the back. And when it comes time to put the head on, it's kind of a pain. So we're going to now do, so that was the top, obviously. So we're going to do the bottom. So I'm going to do a pearl. Same stuff, just different color. So like something like that. And just tie it kind of in the middle. Same thing, pinch wrap it right on. And once you got that on there, it's just going to look like it's kind of a mess. At the end, everything gets brushed out too. But we're going to fold them both back. And then we're going to do just a couple wraps here to secure them in. It's one of those things that you do like 100 times and eventually you'll get it kind of the way you want it. So you end up with a nub here, but like I said, if you had twice that amount, you're talking a big kind of bulbous end to it, and you don't want that. On the very last thing I do, I actually do use laser dub because I have this particular color and it's shorter that I want. This is this is the Senyo's laser dub in red. And we're talking like a really small clump of it here. So do that, and I'm just going to tie it right in. It's just going to be like a bleeding spot or a hot spot or whatever you want to call it. And I'm just going to tie that actually in front of that clump there. Fold it right over and just secure it in. And that's going to be our body for the most part here. The only thing we have to do now is brush it out. So you're going to bring the thread wraps up forward. I'm going to flip it over. I do a couple interspace things. And one thing, I just saw someone do this when we first started. It just kind of was good timing. They put like a bump in here. It's more of a, I don't know if you'd call it a thread dam, but it's just another, almost like you're creating two little wells in here between the, I don't know if you can actually see that, but there's like a well here and a well there. So when I put the cement in to actually secure the head on there, it just adds more holding power. So I'm going to cut that right off. This all gets hidden, so it doesn't actually have to be pretty. Thank God. And the only other thing I do here before I get the head on, and I'm just going to do it on my lap, I take the whole fly, and I'll end up brushing it out with your typical cat brush or something. I just do it on my shorts or my pants or whatever, and just get the fibers kind of going all in the right direction, so give me half a sec. Also gets rid of any of the loose ones that I didn't actually secure in. So that's getting kind of to where we need to be. If you get some of these wild ones on here, which you tend to at times, just even the static electricity will kind of do it. Got it all over me already. I'll trim up a couple of the loose ends, but once they get packaged up and the head's on there, they kind of calm down too. So, all right, so that's our body on there with the Zonker strip, the Lateral's dubbing, the laser dub flash, and the Bill's body braid. The next part's actually attaching the head onto it. So Britt was asking about ruining the finish on it. If you do it right and you do it slowly, which I learned the hard way, like everyone, you shouldn't have too many problems. You should be able to insert the bodkin, which I'm going to show you, kind of quickly, but not too fast, and you won't actually get you won't have it like make this huge hole and all this stuff. So the best tool, and it's great for starting fires outside in like your fire pit, is a butane torch. I'm sure other people have other reasons. And I use a bodkin. This is something that a bunch of people are doing. It's relatively easy. So we're essentially doing this. We're just heating up the bodkin. You don't have to do it forever, just gonna get it hot. And then before it cools off, you want to insert it right in the back of the head. And when I do them, I put that toothpick in the back. When I airbrush them, that hole, I try to center it up where I want it to, so I can kind of just put this in the same spot and should kind of even out. So now that that's on there, we're going to still do it one more time. So I'm going to heat this up while the head's hanging out there. And then we're going to pull it off semi-slow because we want to actually make sure the head... And thank God you guys can't smell this stuff. Is horrible to smell. Melted rubbers or foam is disgusting. Sorry, Anthony. So we're not going with the crazy big head. It will form on there. It's still clean. I mean, there's no... let's see if I can do that better. It's not... The only damage to this finish is just that one hole. It's not like spread out. It didn't crack or go anywhere. So we're going to do that. And the last part here, and again, this is something you have to do kind of quick because once it sets your hose to make sure it's right. We're going to put some Zap-A-Gap right on here. And sometimes it leaks a tad down there, but it's going to capture in the back. We're going to push it right on. If I measured it right, it should sit just fine. The only last thing is make sure it's actually straight on the hook. There's a pile of them somewhere that are all crooked because I didn't do that. So, but you should see that the eye is just right on the outside there. It doesn't. It's not too far. It's not too long. As far as the back goes, the back is coated on this. Someone had asked that earlier. You can't really see it, but the body fits right into the back. If you wanted to get real fancy, you could open up that back even more and get this further in. But the gap, there's the camera. The gap on this is about where you want it. If I had this any forward, you'd be running out of room. We have this kind of nice angle between the hook and the head itself, and it makes for more hookups. So if you had pushed this back more, you'd start running into issues. The same concept goes for pretty much any of the heads that I do. It's the same concept, measuring it out, putting them on after. Anthony's got it kind of made where he's got the hook into the body and goes from there. These are a little bit more moving parts on it, but at the end of the day, the same result. I mean, the flies create all kinds of action, and this is a medium one. They make bigger ones, so yeah. So that's that one. And you were talking about lines earlier. I always use an outbound short. It's a Rio one, and that I can throw anything from the extra large ones right down to the small ones. And we fish 99% on the ocean, and I've been happy with it. I haven't had any complaints from my end. And most of the people that ask, we recommend a handful of them, and so far I haven't had any real feedback that it hasn't worked out for them. So, but that's all I got. What do you have?
Yeah, no, I just thank Norvise for the opportunity for this.
Yeah. We were supposed to do trivia questions. Someone, Casey mentioned it, and I guess they're doing some. There are 33 people on here. I guess they're doing a couple shirt giveaways. So we're supposed to ask some trivia questions. Since I'm not very prepared, I came up with one, and you probably have to Google it, just as a hint. My one question is, where was the record bluefish caught? The world record bluefish. Where was it caught? I don't care about the weight, but the weight's cool, though. But just curious, what state was it caught in? It is in the U.S., and I can tell you it's on the eastern seaboard, if it helps out. But if someone answers where the largest bluefish was caught, I think they get a shirt. Or I made that up, and I'm going to owe someone a shirt.
And mine is it's the first person who can answer who invented the Beastmaster General fly gets a shirt.
Beastmaster General?
Yeah.
Yeah. So they say the first to respond to the correct answer will win okay, shirt. No, Scott. By the way, Scott that just commented is from the Bahamas, and he's the one catching tarpon, or was catching tarpon on some of ours. It was pretty cool. Oh, very good. A couple guys got it. Cool. All right, well, I don't know. I'll let Norvise figure that out. But yeah, thank you to Norvise for letting us, kind of share this. It's been a lot of fun. We didn't have any idea that it was actually going to take off the way it did, and before you know it, Anthony have spent the primary of the majority of this year in our basements, thanks to that. But it's been fun. So great fly. But so thank you. And if there's other questions, we'll try to answer them as we go along, or we'll get the tape and we'll answer them on the side. So, but yeah, is that it?
Yeah, I guess so. And to
try to get
Oh yeah.
as many people into doing this as they can, and if you guys have any custom popper, requests, we're happy to fill those as well. So
Yeah, and I'm supposed to tell everybody again something I completely forgot to do. Yeah, so Tim and Braden are going to be in Waynesville, North Carolina, and that's coming up this Saturday, the 16th. And it's going to be for a demo day for Norvise, which is actually kind of cool. And that's at the, I've said this 10 times, I still think I get it wrong, Tuckasegee Fly Shop. Tuckasegee Fly Shop. But yeah, if you don't tie on a Norvise, I do recommend it. I spent quite a bit of time working at a fly shop and never actually got my hands on them a lot, even though they sold them. And I think it's awesome. And I don't say that lightly. I mean, I've got to use a lot of them, and this one is, I'll probably never go to anything else. I think it's awesome. I was close on it. I even had the pronunciation spelled out for me, and I got it wrong. Maybe it's from being from Maine. But no, I highly recommend them. I can't say enough nice things about them. And the people there, I've asked plenty of questions, and they're all over it, and it's nice to see. So definitely thumbs up to them. And their bobbins, I use those also. I've got a few of them, and yeah, it's hard to go to anything else. Actually, I gave my last one away, so not bobbin, my other vice. So, but anyway, but thank you guys. It was fun being here, and yeah, maybe we'll get to do it again this winter or something.
Thanks, guys.
Cool. See you guys.